Welcome to another episode of Business and Wealth Australia podcast. If you're thinking about starting a business but not sure where to begin today, Simon and I are going to give you 5 things to get right before you launch. I'd love to introduce Simon. Simon Quest is a fantastic business coach. He is highly experienced with over 20 years of expertise in corporate finance, business strategy, and change management. And last year, he decided to pivot his career and move into a business coaching role. Welcome, Simon.
Thank you very much, Leash. Really excited to be here with you.
So am
Always,
I.
always chuffed to share my experience with new business owners, especially those people thinking about starting a business.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And, I also love working with new business owners because they've got so much hope, right? But at the same time, there's some stuff that they have to get right. And that's what we are here to talk about today.
100%.
And yeah, in our pre chat, we talked about the 5 things that we're going to focus on. And one of the first things that both of us agreed on was defining product. And let's delve deeper into it and understand from a business coach's perspective or from your personal experience, what do you think is one of the key requirements of being able to define the right product?
Well, I think for me, having a product, you have to be able to describe the product from the perspective of the person that's going to use it. So from your client's perspective, because so many people sit off businesses as a side hustle and they know exactly what they're doing and they're so close to the detail that they lose the perspective of what it is that they're actually offering their clients. So stop, pause, and think about what is it that the client's buying? How are you helping the client to give them value or to take away client pain? Make sure that it's very clear what exactly the client's going to get.
I think also keeping the problem in focus, right? Like, what problem are you really trying to solve for? And then going after that and trying to produce a product that is going to solve that problem for people.
Yeah, look, and it often evolves as the business grows. Part of what we talked about is flexibility is really important. So it's not the end of the world. It's not as if you're locking something down in concrete. When you launch, you need to be able to explain clearly what it is that you're going to market with, what clients are going to get, what the options are, and what they can't get, right? I think so many businesses try to be everything for everybody, and that's a dangerous way to start.
That's so true. Putting boundaries, that's
Mm.
so important to be able to have a boundary and say, I'm not going to play outside this boundary. And I think that sets up really good expectations, both for the client and for yourself as well. And I totally agree. People actually respect it when you say, I'm unable to play this is the field that I play in and I work with other people. I can get you some help from other people in this area, but I'm not someone who does this on a regular
Who
basis.
does this? Yeah. Look, I think this is a trap we all fall into. And I would say I'm falling into it as well, right? You want to try and keep it as broad as possible, but the more you can niche down, the better.
But I think of, for example, having a business or serving a product as a pyramid structure as well. And I think about like the bottom of the pyramid is where you get a lot of high traffic, but maybe
Mm.
not your high value client. And as you move up the pyramid chain, you get low traffic, but high value clients, the clients that you really want to work with.
Yeah.
And when a new business starts off, you want all parts of the pyramid to get you to your ideal client. But that's the way I think about it.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense as well because you've got to learn as you go. Those first few clients, probably not going to get the best experience that you're ever going to offer. So it's better to have a broad base, practice on the broad base as you get more finite in terms of what you're offering. You can move up the value chain and be more specific. And it's all about quality over quantity in the long run, isn't it?
That is so true. I remember when we started our business, we had this like fantastic idea that people would want to migrate softwares, like their accounting softwares that they would
Okay.
want to move from maybe Masaud to Zero or from QuickBooks to Zero. And then once we came into the market and spent some time with people who realized that had no traction, that had no legs because people normally just stick to the provider that they've got. And worst case scenario, if they do move, they sort of draw a line in the sand and they say, all right, cool.
I encourage my clients to think about, well, what can they offer small, medium, and large in terms of investment required, and then look at the different markets they're addressing. So try and chunk it up and play in a couple of different areas. You don't want to play in too many areas, but you probably want to have 4 or 5 target markets, 4 or 5 key products that you're offering, see how that goes. And then that gives you the opportunity to dial some down, dial some up as you progress.
And which aspect of this do you think aligns well with market research or validating the demand and price?
Yeah, well, look, you said the word that I was thinking about, demand, right? Because for me, market research, which is the second thing we were talking about. So the first thing we said was get your product right, then market research. And it's all about making sure you understand the demand for those products. And ideally, demand at the price point that you're considering, because that's going to equate to whether or not you're making the sales and the revenue that you expect and hopefully the profit that you expect. Market research about demand. And I always think you don't have to over engineer these things. Go and speak to the people that you know, speak to your network, especially the network that are closest to you and are going to be honest with you. And they're going to tell you, Simon, I think you're barking up the wrong tree. Be careful. So speak to your network, try and explain what you're trying to sell. Ask them if it's interested, if they would be interested in that, making sure you tell them how much it's going to cost. And if your peers and network aren't prepared to buy it or aren't prepared to advocate for 2 or 3 of their contacts, you've got to start thinking long and hard whether you're on the right track.
Yeah. And I guess if you're not on the right track, they give you poor feedback, then you go back to step one and you do more research or create another
Yeah.
product or take their feedback on.
Yeah, that's right. And it's sometimes you're going to have to kill the product and that's never comfortable. But other times it's just a case of tweaking it and repackaging it and quite often simplifying it, right? You're so passionate about what you're offering. You want to offer the gold, the Rolls Royce version of everything. But sometimes the market just wants to have something a bit smaller, a bit more basic to start off with and then build to it.
And how do you see aligning yourself with competitors in this scenario?
All of us, most of us are bringing in a product or service that's similar to something that's out there. There's not
Mm.
many people that are going to be starting something, a whole new category themselves. And hats off to those people that do achieve that. But we're talking about the 90% of us that are bringing something into the market. Hopefully, we're going to have our own spin on it in terms of customer service, in terms of location, in terms of flexibility. But you do need to understand the competitors and who else is out there, what their strengths and weaknesses are, what's their price points, what's their unique value proposition. The marketplace has got space for multiple players, but you need to be able to respect your competitors and see where they're playing.
That's true. For me, I always tell my clients to also understand what their competitors are charging, but what
Mm.
kind of deals they are providing their clients, right? Like if they are really bad at customer service, then you need to lift up your game in customer service. And that is going to take you off the charts because people will come to you that saying things like, oh, the 3 people I've spoken to haven't returned my calls, or they return my calls after 2 days. Versus if you are proactive and if you are doing the things that other people in your area aren't doing, then that will put you ahead by multiple miles.
Spot on. Look, sometimes it's just doing the simple things really well. I've met a couple of trade businesses that just are really, really good at communication, really, really good at being courteous and client service. And gosh, all of a sudden, they've got more work than they know what to do with. And you'd think everybody had that attitude, but it's not always the case. So knowing your competitors, understanding their strengths and weaknesses gives you that opportunity to differentiate.
Yeah, that's so true. And communication is such a good point because, for example, with my profession, I'm an accountant. People
Yep.
go, I need to be a really, really good accountant to be able to win clients. And I completely agree with that. But then on top of that, you also have to be a really good communicator and combine those two skill sets together.
Yeah. And I think you're spot on, right? You're spot on. And it's being able to, in your case, combining some of those hard skills with the soft skills that makes your business so effective. Yeah.
Mm. And if
Yeah.
I was,
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to ask you, if you were starting a business today, what would you test before launching?
Well, I think for me, I should have done more competitive research, but I think I became much more aware of who else was offering business coaching services after after I was in the game. And it was only then that I needed to start to react, understand their strengths, their weaknesses, how to position myself relative to others. So there's a little bit of self selection because you're so passionate about what you want to do. And then probably talking to clients, potential clients, and understanding their specific needs. And once again, for me, having come from a corporate environment, it's taken me a while to decorporatize myself and actually talk the language of your clients. I could have accelerated that process with a bit more market research as well.
That's fair. I think there are always things that you could do better as a business.
Yeah.
And you've got to not be too hard on yourself as well.
Yeah.
You need to be kind to yourself. But yeah, when Fahad and I launched the business, we then all we could see was accountants everywhere.
Yeah.
Like the only thing, every suburb I went to, the first thing I did was search accountants, both on Google
Yeah.
and Google Maps. And I was like, okay, like who works in this area? And then even when I drive today, every time I see an accountant or a tax return agent, my eyes just go, okay, like there's someone who does accounting here.
Does that make you feel uncomfortable? Does that make you nervous or does it make you excited that you're taking on someone else?
It doesn't make me nervous or
Mm.
excited. I think one of the things that my dad has always taught me is to just be really, really good at what you do. And then you don't have to worry about anybody else. And then you
Yeah.
just run your own race.
Mm.
So I look at it and just go, okay, cool. It's just
Yeah.
indifferent, but I
Yeah.
notice it.
Yeah, and that's it's an interesting observation because we're talking about research, market research, and we're talking about keeping an eye on competitors, but there is also a time when you've just got to start focusing on yourself and stop worrying about what everyone else is doing and just do what you say you're going to do well.
Yeah, that's true. I think like analytically, I analyze other accountants.
Yep.
I kind of go, I'm running my own race.
You're running your own race. Yeah, good.
Good.
So market research, I mean, the only other thing that I was thinking about for market research, competitors and talking to potential clients, you do have a way to sort of try and test demand nowadays with social media. And it is a bit fickle, but you can try and use that to gauge interest. And so many people are actually more than happy to help. So Instagram posts and Facebook posts to say, hey, this is what I'm thinking of doing. Would you be interested? Does help to get a bit of a flavor as to where the broader market's at.
Yeah, that's so true. I've seen some
Mm.
brands do it really well. They want to launch something and then they'll sort of say, "Hey, like this is what I'm trying to launch. What do you think?" Haven't tried that at all, but it's a
No,
good idea.
look at, I think you've got to have a bit of a community, but then once you've got that community, you're starting to make them feel like it's part of their business as well. So, maybe when you're expanding your business into many other aspects, the current clients can decide whether they're keen on those services and you're taking the business in that direction. I th-
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a
yeah,
good idea.
good.
I feel like we've talked a bunch about market
Mm.
research. So shall we move on to the third aspect?
Yeah. So that was all about understanding your target market and your client persona. And this is, once again, is really important. And I actually encourage people to stop and get a piece of paper and write it down. Who is it that you're selling your products or services to? Is there a gender bias? Is there an age group bias? Is there a geography bias? What does that person look like? What's their life all about? What's their pain point? What's the things that make them excited? And all of a sudden, you start to create this picture of your potential client. And as I said before, it's uncomfortable because all of us want to be keeping 7 billion people happy, but actually, you've got to focus on your niche. Think about what that client is looking for, their pain points, and that will help you to make sure you're on the right track. But it'll also help you to communicate to that target clients in the right way.
That's very true. I remember when we first started our firm, we thought that we will go in a certain direction.
Mm.
And we thought we will only work with, or our target market is going to be, for example, tech entrepreneurs and tech and startup companies
Yep.
and that tech culture, just because we have an app for tax returns, but we also have a firm. And we thought that our firm will also look after tech stuff. And soon we realized that we can provide services to business owners more broadly.
Yep.
And then once that clicked in, it changed the game.
Mm.
So once we identified like a busy business owner, they want communication, they want to know what their numbers are looking like. before they have to pay the tax bill. And they want to know, for example, what to do to have or to reduce their tax bill. And then we thought, okay, this is a repeatable process. And of course, we can still appeal to the tech community, but we can also appeal to small business owners across the board who are in this similar situation. So sometimes I think target market is about affinity, but
Mm.
at times it can be affinity agnostic.
Yes, but I think even what you described is a cohort of all small business owners. You're talking about proactive people that are actually actively seeking more financial advice. But you are right that in your case, that client persona is evolved, and that's also fine. But I'm sure you were talking to your potential clients in a different way when you started, and you were trying to get to those tech, high growth businesses. And you're now talking in a different way because you've changed that client persona in your mind.
That's true. But I
Mm.
think we've also done that market research,
Yep.
and that has then updated almost our target market. It goes to show that a business is a living, breathing organization and things will keep changing and evolving. And as a business owner, you need to be open to change.
No, that's right. I mean, I can't remember if it's Ericsson or Nokia, but one of them started as a gumboot manufacturer, right? So you go from something as silly as gumboots, and all of a sudden you're making mobile phones. I think that was over an extended period of time, but businesses need to evolve. You can't keep doing the same thing. Otherwise, you just go broke.
Or you'll
Um,
be a Nokia.
but you'll be a Nokia. That's right. But you don't change fast enough. So you've got to evolve. I think it is important to understand that target client. Once again, I'd encourage you to try and put yourself in the shoes of that client and look back towards your business. So if I was a small business owner, what are my pain points? How can you, as a tax operator or tax accounting practice, help me and think about things through the perspective of your potential client?
That's so true. And I think once we nailed that, we were able to resonate and connect our target market
Yeah,
a lot faster.
yeah, yep.
Mm,
So understanding that's really important. It helps you again as you evolve to find that niche that makes the most sense for you as the business.
That's true. And then what are your thoughts on potentially a business owner putting themselves in the shoes of their clients or their target market, potentially having a half day workshop, thinking about what sort of stuff they'd go through?
Yeah, well, we've all got our own personal experiences to draw from. And I've certainly realized, even though you're giving advice to people, you make mistakes yourself, and often it's my mistakes that are the most valuable to share with others. So that's important. I do think it's important to take those opportunities to immerse yourself in your clients' businesses. So any time that you've got to actually get onto the client premise, see what it feels like, ask the stupid questions, because there are no things stupid questions. And I'm sure you and I both got clients that do work that we can hardly comprehend. One of my clients does scaffolding on the Sydney Harbour Bridge, and I wouldn't even know where to start, how to hang stuff off the bottom. But it's only by asking questions, being inquisitive, grabbing those opportunities to actually see how it works that you learn and grow.
Now, moving on to our fourth point, which is actually getting out there and marketing
Mhm.
your product, promoting your product, and how to get perhaps your first 10 or 20 fee paying clients.
Look, I think this is the tough part for
Mm,
many small business owners, especially depending where you come from. Right? A lot of people they're either really passionate about building the product or they're good on the tools, but they're not really good at selling per se. Can feel uncomfortable. Selling can feel a bit not I was gonna say sleazy, that's not really a bit cringy, right? Sometimes sales can be cringy. So you've got to have the right perspective on sales.
mm,
Someone said to me, sales is all about helping people. And once I changed that mindset, it became a lot easier, right? I'm not trying to sell my product to you. I'm trying to help you because my product meets your needs. So getting new leads is really important. I always encourage my clients to think about you're going to have some leads that you know already, and you're going to have some leads that you don't know. The ones you know already are much easier to deal with. So that's people that are in your current network, either your
Wow.
business network or your personal network. So you can reach out to them and you can start to try and offer your products to them. You can do that on a one-to-one basis. Nowadays, we've got things like LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram where we can start to push our message to our broader networks, which makes life a bit easier. And then you've got people that you don't know, which is probably the tougher side of sales or lead generation. So how do you get out there and make contact with individuals? And once again, it's either going to be one-to-one, which is cold calling or walking the streets, knocking on doors, which is never easy, or advertising your product broader market. So getting out there and trying to make people aware of your product.
Yeah, true. But I have a slightly different take. And that is, I think if you can nail your product, if you can understand your target market and what pain points they've got, then it is almost not even marketing or promotion. You just go, let them know how you can help them.
Yep.
Because once you've got a clarity in your message, then marketing and promotion becomes so much easier because you're not really marketing. You're saying, hey, come to me if you'd like, and I can solve this problem for you.
Yeah. That doesn't sound, that sounds quite cruisy. There's no urgency. And people pick up on that and they're
Mm.
attracted to it, right? If you've got that confidence in what you're offering. But the important thing there is you've got this great product or service. You need to make sure that people are aware of it and find a way to get that message out into the broader market.
Yeah, true.
So what have you guys done with your business to try and get those small businesses aware of the great offering that you've got?
I'll tell you my failings initially, and then I can
Yeah.
also tell you what's
Mm.
worked. I remember calling, I think, 4 or 5 financial planners and saying, hey, like we're a new accounting firm and would you like to work with us? And it was just like, no, we've got accounting relationships. The phone would just, they would put the phone down. So cold calling for us didn't work, but I know that it works for a lot of people. So it's a great tool if you can nail how to talk to people. But for us, primarily what's worked really well is networking.
Yeah.
Both myself and Baha came from corporate backgrounds. So our like networks in corporate were almost redundant as soon as we started a business because as you know, the business circles are like a completely different world to the
Yes.
corporate circles
Yes.
and they operate differently. I think for us, consistency has been key and also iterating. So once we learned, we take on feedback really quickly.
Yep.
So failing quickly, failing fast, learning fast, and moving on quickly has what helped us a lot. And not beating ourselves about the fact that we failed, just sort of
Yeah.
gaining the insights, moving on, and then consistently showing up. There's a lot of value in showing up because
Yeah.
once you start showing up, you build credibility. And once you build credibility, people start trusting you and then they want to work with you.
Yeah.
So, an example is Five Dog Chamber of Commerce, where we started going at the start of our business journey. I think 9 months down the track, we got our first client from it because they said, hey, we've seen you
Yeah.
consistently come to these events and we'd like you to look after our accounting.
And that's so important for businesses like yours where trust is so important. You're not just buying a product that's pretty standard, that's got a short lifespan. You're buying something that's expensive. Yeah, well, high, it's got a high ticket price. It's quite important for your business. People want to make sure that they can trust you before they do business with you. And that's fine and that's fair. So it's just important that you appreciate that it's going to take that time to build that trust and build that into the planning and be patient. I think in businesses like yourselves, where trust is so important, that's where the feedback and client testimonials and all the rest becomes so important, especially in today's day and age where people really go and check up on the business. First thing we do is we go and see what your website looks like. We see your social media. We look at your reviews. What are other people saying? And we're looking for that community endorsement of the organization. So making sure that you've got those data points in place is important, and nurturing your clients so they say nice things about you because you've earned those things. It's so important.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
so true. But then also there's the concept of having social media and like you touched on earlier, social networks like Facebook, LinkedIn, I think they can also support and augment your.
Yes. No, I post a bit of stuff on social media. Very rarely do people reach out to me directly from social media to say, "Hey, can I work with you?" But when people are trying to find out about Simon Crisp, they've got something to see there. And there's content, and I'm sharing my personality, I'm sharing my insights. So often people get a chance to get to know me without even talking to me. And when we have that conversation, all of a sudden the trust level has already increased because they've seen some of that content
That is
out
spot
there.
on. So a lot of people give up on social media because they say, "Oh, I'm not getting traction." But I think people actually use people's Instagram or LinkedIn, depending on the kind of product or service you're looking for, and they want to see personality. They want to see
Yes.
what this person likes, dislikes, what kind of posts they've got, and are they posting regularly? I think you've hit the nail on the head where people, when they are researching about you, they will look at your social channels.
Yeah. No, that's right. Okay. So I think that's, leads and promotions is important. The fifth thing we talked about was setting goals, cash flow, and basic structures. And I think leading on to what we said, I think there's quite an important piece there. We talked about in the leads and promotion, the fact that it's going to take time. One of the key things that I advise my clients about is just planning for that growth phase because it does take a while. And sometimes it takes longer than expected. And you need to be, it's great to be optimistic, right? I think we all should be optimistic in terms of what's it going to look like if everything goes perfectly. But you do need to think about what's going to happen. What does it look like if things go slowly? And can I afford that? So, there's no magic number, but I think you need to be comfortable as to how you're going to put food on the table for a good 6 months before you launch into business. One of the things that I've done personally is I actually diarise to get together with my wife once a month just to talk about how the business is going and
Oh,
to
that's
sort of
so.
play. I think I feel like I've got this. Well, she's been very generous to allow me this opportunity to start a business, which is going to have a growth phase. And part of that is then playing back to her, okay, this is how we're going, fast or slower than I expected. And it actually makes me feel so much better afterwards because I feel there's alignment. And you don't want to be carrying all that stress yourself because hopefully our families are all seeing us really enjoying and thriving, starting a business and the challenge and the excitement of that. But it does come, well, you just need to have runway so that you don't go rushing back to the safety of paid employment or closing down the business too soon because you didn't get a chance to grow.
Because that really hurts your credibility as well, right? Like I was talking about
Yeah.
to get clients, because a lot of the time it is time in the market as well versus, and I think this terminology is used for share trading, but I'm using it
Ah,
for businesses. um, and yeah, I completely agree. And so, what do you recommend people if someone came to you today, Simon? I want to start off my business. How many months of savings or being able to pay expenses would you recommend to someone?
I think it depends. It's going to depend on the type of business. So we talked about your business, which is really important for trust. It's going to be a longer period of time. If you're starting to sell something where there's high demand and it's commoditized and you're going to get going pretty quickly, maybe you can afford to be a bit shorter. But I would really be encouraging people to have a buffer that they're not planning to use that's there just in case. So 3 to 6 months would be the minimum. And it depends on your family situation as well. And depends on how many dependents you've got. But I would be saying aim for 3 to 6 months. And what does your cash flow look? It's also going to depend on what your cash flow forecast looks like. And look, I think for you and I, we started, we went from corporate, we then started to serve clients in the small business arena. In a business, they want to continue to do that same business, but by themselves. So if you're an electrician, let's say you're working for someone, successful practice, you want to be brave and launch out yourself. You're probably going to be able to get your momentum a lot faster because you're going in the same market and you're just leveraging like the contacts that you've already got.
Yeah, true. But for someone like an electrician, I'd say the cost of inventory would be higher.
Yes.
So
Yes.
you'd have
I
to get
guess
a
it's,
van. you'd have to make sure it's loaded up with different types of switches. And I don't know, I don't speak electrician, but
Yeah, no, you're spot on. And I think maybe you've got more visibility of what your setup costs are going to be. And maybe for businesses that you and I have, where lower setup costs, but a longer ramp up to get the cash flow from the business that you're expecting, a slightly different dynamic. Yeah. Anyway, I think it's just a case of being cautious and giving yourself some room to move, and then making sure that you've got a clear plan as to what's going to happen in that first year in terms of what are the milestones, what am I expecting, what does that mean from a cash flow perspective, and maybe start the thinking of, all right, well, what am I going to do if at month 6 I'm not hitting the number I was expecting? What's the pull the plug number? Because we talked about failing fast as well, right? You've got to try and put some of those parameters in place, being realistic about it. And that's where I encourage small business owners to be on top of their numbers. Have a bookkeeper that's helping you, or have an accountant that's helping you to keep track of these things, because it's quite easy to lose control of where you're actually at and what the financial health really is of your business. So I'm batting to hear you. That's better.
okay. I remember at the first year mark, or maybe actually it was the first 6 months, I would ask Fahad to send me the financial statements for that month every
Yep.
single month. So as soon as it was the first of the next month, I'd say, hey, can you please send me the financial statements? So similar to a conversation that you and your wife have been having, but
Yep.
I think ours was more numbers driven, and I just wanted to look at the data and I wanted to compare month by month. And I think after month 4, I felt very comfortable. And by the time we hit December, I was like, okay. And then I think in January, I was like, all right, it's sort of like a wheel that's churning.
Yeah, it's got a bit more momentum. So did you have a monthly forecast?
We had an annual target that we wanted to meet. And because accounting is seasonal,
Okay.
so we thought we will have some lumpy months and we'll have some speed breaker months. So like December and January, for example, are your speed breaker months. Nobody really wants to think about accountants. Everyone really just wants to have a party. Whereas there's like, I think people come back in February and they go, all right, taxes.
So that's an interesting insight for our listeners, right? Because there you are, someone that's very financially literate, acknowledging that it's going to be lumpy, acknowledging that you're going to try and aim for something over the whole year. But you were probably astute enough to know that you had enough money in the bank account to handle December and January. And for some of the people out there, just got to be aware of the ebbs and flows of what can happen through the year.
December or January can be a bit of a drain on your bank accounts.
Definitely.
So save up for that.
Definitely. Well, talking about setting the business up, what do you advise people from a structure perspective, a corporate structure? And I think it's something that accountants are best placed to advise on.
Yeah, for sure. So I think if you are dabbling in a business, you want to try it out, a safest thing to do is probably get an API.
Yep.
And that is a low cost mechanism, but you need it before you sell anything, product or service. You need to have an ABN. Otherwise, if you don't have an ABN, the person that you're selling to has the right to withhold up to 47% to pay to the ATO.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's a steep figure. So imagine if you are like out of a job, started your business and you don't have an ABN, you're selling, and someone's holding nearly 50% of your invoice because they have to give it to the ATO. So
Yeah.
the rules are quite strict. But yeah, a really nice starting point is an ABN. But then when the business is trading a lot more and it's growing really quickly, then you need to start thinking about GST, which is goods and services tax, which is 10% in Australia. And that kicks off when you have around about $75,000 worth of sales. And that is a really good point to think about if it's a good time to move into something like a company. And trusts are a little bit complex. So maybe you and I can touch on that in another episode. I think starting off as a sole trader is a really good place to start.
And look, and it's pretty cheap, isn't it? I think it's $50 a year for an ABN. So it's not as if it sounds like a big thing to have an Australian business number associated to you, but it's just good discipline and it's not going to break the bank.
Yeah, exactly. And then I think once people hit that GST number, the $75,000, that's when things kick into action. Lots of
Yeah.
you've got to lodge your BAS on a quarterly basis or a monthly basis, and then there's a lot of compliance that comes into play.
What's the benefit of actually forming a PTY limited?
There are loads of benefits of
Hmm.
starting a company. And one of them is, for example, that you've got limited liability.
Yeah.
So if Simon Chris, as the business coach on his personal name, is running a business and someone wants to, hopefully that touch wood, that doesn't happen to you. But yeah, if they want to sue someone, they can go for your personal assets as well. Whereas when you're in a company, it's called a PTY limited because it is a limited liability structure. So the liability is closed off inside of that company. So, someone sues for a mistake, that you only pay from the company funds. So that's a really, really, positive thing in it, but also tax advantages because companies or smaller companies are taxed at 25%. And then when you become a bigger company, you get taxed at 30%. So versus an individual, which is 45%, and you can keep your profits in the company until you decide to take them out of the company. That's when you pay the higher amount of tax. So there are lots of advantages of running your business in a company, but I think they kick into play when you're big enough.
Yep. Yeah, no, I think you're spot on. The running companies are going to be a bit more expensive, $600-700 a year, and all that compliance you're talking about. But you're right. I've got a PTY limited. I think as soon as you start thinking about what insurance do I need to take out, it's probably a time to start thinking about whether or not you want to have your risk closed off into the business itself. So I think that's really helpful. That gives people a bit of an idea as to some of the things to think about as they're about to launch into a business.
Yeah, definitely. So we've discussed at a high level, I think lots of really meaty topics like
Yeah.
product research, target market, marketing, and having some goals and a structure and having some cash in the bank to survive, which has been fantastic. Thank you so much, Simon, for coming onto the Business and Wealth podcast. If people want to reach out to you, what is the best way of doing so?
Well, I guess it's all through socials, isn't it? Right. I'm on LinkedIn. That's a great place to start. My business is Brainiac Brookvale, and I've got an Instagram handle for that. Yeah. But LinkedIn's probably the easiest place to find me, Simon Chris. Yeah. And it's
Fantastic.
all the best to those businesses that are thinking about starting out.
Yeah, definitely. I'll also leave a link to both your LinkedIn and Instagram profiles in the show notes. So
That'd be
thank
great.
you. No worries. Thank you so much for joining, Simon.
My pleasure.